Well, I wanted to talk about some of the do's and don'ts of water holes for deer. And, you know, we've been doing this for 20 years with water holes and talk about it all the time, talk about it online. We talked about using tank water holes 15 years ago. So at a time, I don't think anyone was talking about using tanks on their land for water holes at that time. So we've really been doing this a lot. I was talking to Dylan earlier. I think over the last 20 seasons of going to client properties, I probably recommended the use of over 10,000 water holes on client properties. Plus you get all the feedback of what's worked, what's hasn't. So I want to bring that to you in case you're thinking about water holes. They're extremely powerful tools for shooting deer. And we use them all the time to shoot deer. So it's pretty cool. They're a great piece of the puzzle when it comes to establishing a line of movement. That's another video that we're shooting today. What we've learned over the years, we learned by making mistakes. You know, when we first started out, size is really critical when it comes to the water hole, and that really has to do with the water hole drying out. And once the deer stop using it, say you attract them, it's there for a month, the deer use it over and over, and all of a sudden it runs out, then they stop using it after they come a few times, and it takes a good 2 or 3 weeks for them to use it again. So if you run out the end of October, you don't put any water in it until mid-November, you just blew the season. And so you can't run out. We started out with half barrels, half 55-gallon barrels, cut in half, 27.5 gallons. And when it was dry and there's a lot of deer use, we found out that would last about a week. So really not long enough at all. We graduated to 100-gallon, 110. There's been 2 years in a row where I didn't have to put water in them because we had enough rain. But then there's other years we've had to put water in them 5 times. And I would say the average year is 2 to 3 times. So you have to continually put water back in them. The 100 gallons were okay, 110 gallons. There's one at TSC that's about $80, $85 for a 110-gallon tank. Pretty cost effective, but again, if they run out, which they always do, then it can really stop your hunting for them, or even hurt that line of movement that you're trying to create. You know, we have bedding over here, water over there, a small hunting plot over there, a big food plot, a holding plot over there where we want to plan to hold the deer towards dark. So if you break this piece of the chain, then why are deer necessarily going to go back and forth over this area a few hundred yards long when there's a big gaping hole in attraction in one of those locations? So we graduate to 150 and then finally 300. Now I've dug in a lot of these with a shovel. Dylan's dug in a bunch too. And they're a big pain when it comes to 300 gallon. We've been using machines to put them in. They're 25 inches deep. They're 63 by 69 inches. So it's a big hole that you have to dig to get water in there. But what we found over the years, deer go through about 100 gallons every 3 to 4 weeks during moderate drought and moderate use. So kind of do the math. What's cool about this, you can kind of see 25 inches deep. That means this first ribbed line down here is about 8 inches. And so even at 8 inches, we have deer that'll get down on their knees and get that water. We have LL Beams, a 5-year-old over on our, what we call Gold Rush water hole over here. He got down on his knees in the last couple months to get water. Just gets right down there. We have deer from last year getting down on their knees right here to get down and get that water. They can step into this and get water. It's not that deep for them, and they like to cool off sometimes during the rut. So we've migrated to that 300 gallons because if we fill these up in September, then we're good to go for the season. You just get a little rain and there's always going to be water in there as opposed to it drying out and then destroying the pattern of use. Another thing, we really like a flat open surface. You can see we have our Green Max traffic blend in here, and then we've had extreme drought, but there's green coming in. It'll actually fill in here pretty well. It's grasses, 1 clover, 1 vetch, 1 bird's foot trefoil. We want it to hold the soil in this location. That's what it's going to do. If you plant clover, it'll be all dirt, down to the dirt, it won't grow. But we want a little bit of clearing around this water hole. You can see we only have about 10, 15 feet around here that's open, and that's like the perfect little clearing in the woods with a water hole in the middle of it. We want it fairly flat. We want this open. We'll plant that grass year round. We don't plant clover anymore because it would chew it up. We have a clover blend. I wouldn't recommend you plant it around. I'd recommend our Green Max traffic blend. That's what we call it. It's deer traffic, human traffic. It's meant to hold the soil. When you get over here, we have a slight slope coming into here, into this water. We want to funnel water when it rains heavy. We want it to rush in here and help fill this. you don't want too much of a slope. We've had slopes that come up like this where it's built into a bank. The deer don't seem to like to put their head down and be below that bank. I've seen people, clients that have put brush around them to try to funnel the deer into a certain area so they get a shot. You know, our tree stand is right up here. And what you find is the deer will just avoid it. They don't like sticking their head in between a bunch of brush to get some water. So you want a nice open area around it. You want that size of tank. You want a little runoff if you can with a hill. If not, just flatten it, bury it below. You can see how the ground level is above the tank on this side, and it's above it over here so water can come in. You want that opening area. And then we also want a tree stand nearby. If you don't have a bow stand near your water holes, it's a sin in my book. You want to be able to have a bow stand right by that. That means you need to have good access. You can see our switchgrass line up there. We just pop in through the switchgrass, get up here, and we can watch this whole world right here. You have to have a stand location by it. Think of this as a great attraction, and you put it off to the side and you have a bow stand 50 yards away. Well, you're just pulling deer away from your stand location to another point. These water holes are really important. You know, we have stand location, open area around it. We like the 300 gallons, at least 110, but just plan on filling it. And then that 150 is better than that, of course. Lots of do's and don'ts that we've figured out throughout the years. And one major don't is this is a very low risk attraction to a deer, to a mature buck. A mature buck thinks nothing about coming into this at 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock. His bedding's right over here. It's thick cover all around on these three sides. He'll visit this any time of the day, low risk to that deer. It's a great attraction any time of the day. Great morning stand, because we can slip in here, and when a buck's here, they're usually here for a minute or less and they're moving through. They get a quick drink and they move on. They don't enjoy a beverage like we do. They just take a drink because they have to and move on. The worst place that you could put a water hole is a food plot. And let me explain. Food plots are one of the highest risk locations to a deer in their daily movement. They go out to an open food plot. Doesn't even matter the size. You're taking a low risk attraction that's a very high level of attraction to a mature buck, and then you're adding it to that food source that has a high level attraction. Let's just has a high level attraction for the afternoon only. So let's look at a food plot that maybe they come in for the last hour of the day. Well, you add the water hole there. Now you can only hunt that in the afternoon. If you go in the morning on a food source, typically you're spooking deer. But let's say that food plot to a deer has a risk level of a 7 out of 10, 6 out of 10. One of the riskiest things they do all day. This water hole right here back in some cover is a 1 out of 10. So one of the lowest risk things that you do. Take this 1 out of 10 risk, add it to that 7 out of 10 or 6 out of 10 there. You don't lower the food plot level of risk to a mature buck to that of the water hole. You raise the water hole risk level to that of the food source. I hope that makes sense. You're making this a lot more risky proposition for a mature buck, so he only hits it in the afternoon. Now you just took out a morning stand, and that's the end of it too, is that by having this water hole separate from that food plot, now we get two great stand locations. I went in on an evening hunt for bow on that food source over there, about 150 yards away, and I shot them. And better winds over in that location than right here. The winds would have blown this way. We're over there, they're blown out into the field. So two different wind options for an afternoon hunt, and I chose the right one. But it gives me two great stand locations with a little bit different winds in this scenario right here. So if I added these together, I took out a great stand location. In that of the water hole, I took out a morning stand location. And there's some times where you have a small little hunting plot that's very remote, and you put a water hole in that because you don't have another option for where that water hole would go. It's their only stand location, and then you add that water hole to that food plot. But I can tell you that we have 15 water holes between Wisconsin and Minnesota. Do you know how many of mine are on a food plot? 0. And I'm not saying there's not a case for doing so, but I would estimate that it's 1 in 30 to 40 water holes that we recommend would be on a food source. The rest are not, for very, very good reasons. So I hope that makes a lot of sense for where you locate a water hole. As long as you have dry bedding, it's dry on the way to an afternoon food source, it's a perfect spot for a water hole, even though we have water way down the bottom there, water on the back side of that bedding area. Deer are efficient creatures. They want to go from bedding to food. They don't want to go 100 yards out of their way to hit a water hole. So put that in their line of movement. We're not trying to recreate this. The trails that go through here on this bench system are outstanding. We're keeping everything in a line. The water hole is a part of that. They don't want to go 50 yards out of their way over there. Put the water hole where they movement, make it separate, make it big enough to matter to deer and to last the season. And that's what we've learned so far. I'm gonna even ask Dylan, because Dylan's been doing this for a long time with me. Dylan, you probably dug in your first water hole with me, WHS, in 2016?
Yep.
Had you dug in any, I think you might have dug in before that?
A couple previous to that, and they were smaller, they didn't last through the fall. That's, one lesson that I tell a lot of my clients that I learned the hard way was, the lease that I currently have in western Wisconsin is very hilly. We cannot get to them to fill them. And so on years that they go dry, we see the deer movement absolutely shut off on those really pinpoint movements. And all of a sudden they're cutting the downwind edges of your tree stands on their trails. And it just really, shoots yourself in the foot to not make them have water all fall. I usually tell people, hey, first week of October, go make sure that those things are brimming so that you have water through the end of October until mid-November, when they're probably freezing up around here at that point anyway.
Yeah, now they have the choice of using the other 4 trails that go by that area too.
Yep.
Yeah, can you think of anything else I missed? We're always learning on this stuff every year.
Touched on the critter stick here, but
oh geez.
One other thing where,
yeah.
I like to recommend that people anchor them in, tie them in, zip tie them in, wire them in so that they're always there.
Well, we have to be honest, when we came out to this right now, in all transparency, Dylan, that might be the critter stick right over there.
Okay.
Well, we came here and it was gone. I don't know if the coons play in it a lot. I don't know if they pushed it out, but we put another one in here because now a squirrel can actually jump out of here to get out. But they'll rot in here. They'll not only will we kill that little critter, which is a shame, but they'll taint the water and you need to get rid of it. Now, mention one more is we have all these leaves and dead leaves and sticks in here. You just take a rake and pull all that stuff out to the side. It'll just get it down to water and make your water a little bit cleaner. But deer like that muddy water. We have a spring-fed creek around here that starts on our property, and the deer generally don't. We never see them go down there and drink. And I think they'll prefer this muddy, swamp-infested, mosquito-infested, swampy water. That's what they're used to. That's what's natural. Some would say that it's warmer water. It's not a shock to their system. There's algae in it, things that they like to process, who knows? But bottom line is they like this. Don't add anything to kill the mosquitoes or anything. That's what deer are used to that. That's their world. I wouldn't add any chemical to this in any way. So those are some of the do's and don'ts. They're a great attraction on your hunting land. We've learned a lot. Again, talking to thousands of clients, also instructing clients 10 times 10,000 water holes. And of course, using them, like I said, I have 15 in Wisconsin and Minnesota right now. We love using them, and they can be a great tool to connect the dots, but to also give you a great all-day stand to shoot a monster buck, because there's very low risk level in a water hole unless you add it to a food plot. Guys, it's food plot time, and I really urge you to check out our food plot company, Pure Wildlife Blends. It's called Pure for a reason. I invite you to check it out. We have food plot blends for all types, and we try to give you all this content on YouTube, articles on the site to help you make sure you not only do it right, plant it right, but you pick the right seed blend for your circumstances.